Welcome back to another episode of OceanInSight, the podcast series brought to you by the Meerwissen Initiative, which supports African and German marine research institutions through a dedicated funding program. Your hosts are Paul Tuda and myself, Hauke Kegler. This time we had Baye, Cheikh, Mbaye and Ibrahima Camara joining us in our show. We had a really nice discussion with them about how to take the pulse of the ocean, which is what they're actually planning to do for the project in Senegal, how to engage with stakeholders from different walks of life when it comes to co-designing the project and disseminating the results. Welcome, Baye and Ibrahima. Thanks for joining us today. This time again, we're in Western Africa, in Senegal. Maybe the both of you introduce yourself to the world quickly. We could start with alphabetical order, and Baye, you can start.
Yeah, my name is Baye. I'm from Senegal. Yeah, so I'm from a physical background initially, and then I moved to oceanography. And then now I am in France, mainly at IID for another postdoc in modeling of fish population dynamics using end-to-end models.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Ibrahima, care to talk a bit about yourself?
Okay, my name is Ibrahima. I am a physical oceanographer at the Laboratory de Physique de l'Atmosphère et de l'Océan. So as Baye, my first background was in physics. We have the same promotion. We come at the same time in the laboratory. We do our master together. And the last project that I involved is to understand climate change impact on coastal zone by looking at all what we call ecosystem services. The impact of climate change on ecosystem services, which include tourism, fishery, all things linked with this activity. So now I involved in the pulse of ocean. Thank you.
Yeah, so both of you are working quite data-centric, right? So you started your career in physical oceanography, and now you are trying to do what doctors are doing a health check of the ocean, because that's basically taking the pulse is doing. Tell us a bit why this is necessary. Is the ocean sick, or is it just a precautionary checkup you do regularly?
The ocean is sick. I'm not sure that I can say that, but yeah, there is something wrong with the ocean for sure, because as we can see, mainly in the coastal zones, there are many things that are happening right now due to climate warming, global warming. We have pollution, we have acidification due to eutrophication and so on. And for us, we mainly live in coastal areas because Senegal is a coastal area, but a specific coastal area because we have the upwelling processes, which bring a lot of richness for the country and for local populations. And yeah, that's only for that is like a nice subject to go to the sea and to see what is going on. And because another thing which is important is for local population, we are living in the coastal areas of Senegal, they are very dependent from the sea, from the coast. Now, what we are seeing in Senegal, in the coastal sea of Senegal, is the fishermen have problems more and more to get fish from the sea because of many reasons. But one of the reasons that we think is happening right now is maybe overfishing, but also the impact of climate on that sea. Because
that's very interesting. What is the relationship then between taking the pulse of the ocean and fisheries? I mean, fisheries does play an important role in the livelihoods of the people. So what is the relationship between taking the pulse of the ocean and the fisheries sector? Is there any relationship that you would like us to know?
Yeah, maybe there is not a direct relationship between them, but I can say that we have an indirect relationship, because if something is happening right now in the sea, we're talking about the impact of overfishing and the impact of global climate change, but we don't have like an evidence of that. So taking the pulse of the sea, having a measure of what is happening now, can tell us about this changing, what is changing now. And in an indirect way, we can relate this changing with what is happening in the fish communities. Because in the Pulse project, mainly we are trying to collect physical data and maybe some biological like chlorophyll data, but they are not directly related to the fish, because we are missing the intermediate link with the zooplankton one, that we can have a strong link between them. But yeah, but we think that it's a beginning of something. When we have some measure of what is happening right now, we can try later to have the impact of the change to the fish community.
Maybe let me just recap, if I can put together everything you've said. So there is some indirect links between what is taking place in the ocean and fisheries. But at the same time, you also mentioned that there are local stakeholders who depend on the system, so fishermen who directly exploit the fisheries. And there have been changes that have taken place. And then you also mentioned there are other actors, the policy makers. They need to make decisions that are enabling, in a sense, to address some of these changes that are taking place. So at the start of the project, or when you were putting together the project, how did you bring together all the interested stakeholders? How did this process occur? So if I may go back to Baye, how was the first process of putting together stakeholders to put up a project that is relevant to Senegal, but that can also have a long-lasting impact on the livelihoods of the local people?
I mean, as you know, we have two different stakeholders. The local actors, mainly the fishermen, and then the policymakers and members from the governments. From the fisherman point of view, they at the beginning it was very difficult for us to see the benefits of what we are measuring actually can be helpful for them. I mean, it was like plenty time of explanation, which did not start with the Pulse project only, because we have also in the past, especially for me during my PhD, because I was focused on small pelagic fishes where fishermen use a lot. And it was a lot of explanation about how things was going on in the sea, and what is the importance of how having measure of the state of the ocean that can help them for their day-to-day life of fishing activities.
Let me just interrupt quickly. How did that relationship develop in the beginning?
At the beginning, they thought that we are trying to spy them for measuring something, and then when we have a result of that, it's a kind of measure to say, oh, fishermen, don't go there or don't fish here or something like that. So it's kind of a beginning of conflict of that. But when we explain that it's important also for them, when we see kind of change or kind of concentration of food or something like that, that can help us, and we can give them the information, and then they can go there to fish and to increase their activities. And the second one was what we see is the department of the Ministry of Environment, which are in charge of a national plan for climate change in Senegal. We explained them that we will go to the sea, we have some measure to do, and then we talk to them about these are the variables that for our perspective we want to investigate. What is your own variables? What do you think is important for us to measure in the framework of your national plan, adaptation climate change plan?
So how has this partnership worked, where you have researchers, policymakers, government institutions, and the fishermen. Is it still working, or are there areas where you say that perhaps can be strengthened, let's say particularly on the local communities? Do they see the benefit of this? Do they see this as a process that can help them in the long run, or they're still suspicious of the process?
All this relationship that we have with different stakeholders, for scientists, for decision makers, or members of department of the government. I mean, the relationship maybe is more stronger, but because we maybe have the same objectives, and we understand more or less more about what is going on. For fishermen and local communities, maybe still more difficult, because we don't have these regular discussions. We have once. It's not regular as we have with scientists and with members of the government. And also, as I said at the beginning, they still really don't see the benefit of going to the sea and just taking a pulse of something, or whatever the measure is, and the impact of what is going on for us right now. Because right now they are having less and less fish, and what they want is something which can resolve these problems. So, but I think what at the end of the project, what we want to do, and what can maybe is the thing which will very interest for fishermen, for example, because we want to put in place like the mobile apps, and these mobile apps, we want to synthesize all that the data that we have, and we want to create a kind of like because when we combine physical and biological data, maybe chlorophyll data from satellites, something like that. So something that they can follow the hotspots of concentrations, together with currents and so on, that they can follow throughout the month or the year or something like that. Maybe this can be something of very interest for them. So, but as we are not at that point, it's still difficult for them to really see the benefits of involving in this kind of project.
Let me just interject by, I find that very interesting. So what you're saying basically is that you like to provide, let's say, a solution-based platform in a mobile phone where a fisherman will wake up and say, well, oh, so today, where am I going to fish? Boom. Looking at all the data that is there, I'm going to fish there. And then you have, let's say, 1,000 fishermen all ending up there. I mean, I'm just asking out of curiosity. A conservationist might say that will actually increase the problem of overexploitation. So what's your response to that?
Yeah, it can be problematic, of sure. That's a very nice question. We didn't really think about what can be the impact of that. But as in Senegal, in the coastal sea of Senegal, we have as well some kind of marine protected areas along the coast. Even if they see something which is happening now and it's interesting for them to go to catch, they will not go there. Yeah, but of course, if they find another potential site, everybody goes there, it can be problematic. How can we handle this point? Really, we didn't start thinking about that. Maybe it's important to have these discussions, and then when we set up this mobile platform, we can as well think about how to not giving the chance for everybody to go in the point at the same times. And also, I have maybe it's kind of question about you for your experience and as well. How do you think about that? How can be the solutions of putting in place platforms and also avoiding of all these persons to go in one point at the same time?
It's a very difficult question which you have to be very cautious how I answer. In terms of regulating how many of them are going to use that information to try and access fish, it's definitely going to be a challenging thing because as we all know, we have good policies, we have management plans in place, but really controlling fishermen and trying to prevent them to go to sea to fish is a challenge. And we cannot find a solution maybe in this podcast, but maybe that's an interesting discussion for the next phase.
So maybe following up directly on that, how did you go ahead with disseminating your information? So you said you're creating an app to that helps fishermen. Did you already also have the policymakers in mind, or like the general public, for example, the coastal populations? Ibrahima, maybe you want to start?
So as we said, we would like to organize a workshop, and during this workshop, we will identify the type of the need in terms of variable, but not only in terms of what I call the final products. So I think with what we think that it is during this workshop, and it is that what I start also to do actually. When I go, I will ask them that their need in terms of type of variable, but how would they would like to get this variable? Would they like to have a time series or a map or something like this, or something or fact sheet, something like that? I also try to have all these things when I go when I discuss with them, and then we can we can bring together all these propositions and try to see how we can disseminate this.
Baye, you got anything to add?
Dissemination of data is always a very complex things. And as Ibrahima said, the mobile apps maybe is one solution for dissemination, and maybe it's at the moment that we understand things and then what we want to present it may be would be more beneficial to fishermen. Then I think having such kind of discussions and others as well, and when we'll hold this workshop with all our partners, we will maybe try to involve all needs for as much as possible for all our partners to see how we can maybe put their needs in these apps. But we are also other ways for data dissemination. I told at the beginning about the national plans for adaptation in climate change. Actually, they want to construct a kind of baselines, because when we talk about climate change, you also want to know what is going on. You have to, kind of state, and then from the state, you see what is changing in the future. And as they are trying to construct some things, sharing with them our data will participating in these baselines that they are trying to construct. So yeah, like throughout the project, we will always have this kind of ideas of what is the best way to share and to disseminate the data, depending on the partners we have and that we are talking with. So yeah, I hope we will have more ideas and more things about to see the best usage of the data we are collecting and how it can be usable for stakeholders.
Hauke, one of the things that I've seen perhaps common in almost all the interviews we've had is there's always this element of communication and dissemination, which I think we really need to put a lot of emphasis in. And maybe this is something that can come up as a recommendation, because it is a huge component of the project, but that is largely always left at the tail end of the project. So we probably rush it through. But I think a lot needs to be put into consideration when we are designing the project, to ask ourselves, how are we going to disseminate the information in a way that all the stakeholders are able to access it in the language that they understand? So maybe this could be another conversation, but I guess as we close, I just want to ask, going forward in the past project, how do you see the landscape changing? What are some of the impacts do you think you'll be able to achieve in the short run? And what are some of the long-term plans that you have, maybe that may not be achieved within the 2-year project? Do you have an exit strategy or a sustainability plan beyond the life of the project?
The project is very interesting for our laboratory. It's the first thing that I could say, I will say, because actually we have, as said, a lack of data in coastal zone in Senegal. So that's why also it is very important to involve the fishermen, the local population in the project. If you explain to them, maybe you will explain again, they will understand what is the importance of this, the continuation of the project. So since we are trying actually to involve policymakers, but I think that if they see that with these 2 years work, we can bring to them some answer to improve, how to say, the management that have to do in local research, in local resources. Maybe Baye can help, I can add something.
Yeah, I say thank you, Ibrahima. You really get to the point. But I think continue our activities beyond the project is most difficult part, because when we talk about scientific things, we always think about means, about money. And this is a problem. But as Ibrahima said, I hope, because we have many stakeholders and also stakeholders from the environment departments, so from the governments, I think they will see interest, at least for continuing the monitoring, because we really identify a very suitable point that we will make our measure, which is in an area where we at the core of the upwelling processes, where you don't have not only the ocean's interests, but also you have all this interaction between the ocean and the atmosphere, which is very important. We really need data, because it is something which is very lacking in Senegal, but also in all the West African regions. So to make this key area in the upwelling zone of Senegal a kind of time series, local time series point that regularly we can go there and observe things to really get new insight about how things are changing in these zones.
Nothing add to my. I don't know what to say anymore. I'm really impressed on how you took everything to heart that was, I think, planned for the idea of Mehrwissen, from getting everybody on board right from the start. The stakeholder buy-in, so keep everybody involved by collecting data. I mean, you have dedicated communication channels to everybody, and it would be really a shame if all this initiative now would end after this 2 years. So I'm really hoping that you will be able to continue the work. And since I think this work is quite exemplary for all the other Mehrwissen projects, is there, like, in very short sentences now, anything you might add on your experience with co-design projects like this that you might want everybody else to take up?
For me, it's very interesting because, as I said, my last work, my last previous work, I didn't make many exchanges with stakeholders. I am in my laboratory, I use data, I plot for publication. It's something very good. But what I think is more important actually is how to make, how the university can help the policymaker to solve some problem. And I really enjoy this point of view because I have to go out of my laboratory to discuss with people and to know they need to try to come back in my laboratory to try to make my best for to give them a kind of response. So it is what I really appreciate in this project, and I think it will be something that I will continue to do next to my scientific work for my own advancement. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think, as Ibrahima said, it's one of the points which is very good with this kind of project is we have these discussions with people that maybe we thought that we would not ever have this kind of discussion. As he said, we are mainly modelers, so we don't see very often to the sea. We still always sit in front of our computers and trying to do things. So it's a very nice thing that we can go and talk with other people which are very different from our initial backgrounds. But maybe something that I can say is maybe missing, and I hope at the end of the project we'll have it. So we didn't have this kind of a partnership or collaboration with other more recent projects. I hope that we can maybe have this kind of work together before the end of the project. So yeah, this is something missing.
Yeah, excellent. A very strong message also to all the early career researchers now, that to never lose the idea of having an impact beyond science itself, and also keep an open mind of different perspectives, especially when it comes to traditional knowledge, for example, from the coastal communities. Don't focus too much on your science discipline, but keep open-minded. And as for the other Mehrwissen projects, I think it's never too late. Talk to them and see what comes up next. I mean, there's a third call coming out now, so there might be even a great opportunity to expand the collaboration. And to the both of you, thanks for sharing your insights. It's been quite enlightening. I mean, I'm working in 2 of the projects, but there was quite a lot to learn from you guys. I really enjoyed the conversation. This already marks the end of our dive into a data-driven health check of the ocean in Senegal. For our next excursion, we'll stay in Western Africa, where we'll hear all about the potential of seaweed to foster blue growth and to enhance biodiversity and ecosystem services. So make sure to stay tuned.